I took over as operations manager at 34. The team had been running itself for 2 years without a real leader, and it showed. Deadlines were suggestions. Budgets were approximate. The Friday afternoon, Team Sync, had somehow evolved into a 2-hour venting session that accomplished nothing except confirming that everyone was equally exhausted. My first week, I cancelled the Friday Sync. I replaced it with a 15-minute stand-up on Monday mornings. You would have thought I'd burned down a church. Marcus, the senior developer, pulled me aside and told me that the Friday meeting was how the team processed the week. I asked him what that meant. He couldn't tell me. I kept the Monday stand-up. By month 2, I had introduced actual deadlines. Not estimates, not targets, not goals. Deadlines. Dates on a calendar with names attached to them. Sarah from marketing told me I was creating a culture of fear. I asked her if the culture of missing every product launch by 3 weeks was preferable. She stopped talking to me outside of meetings after that. The thing nobody tells you about being the person who enforces standards is that people don't hate the standards. They hate you for making the standards real. As long as accountability lived in the abstract, everyone could nod along and feel good about themselves. The moment I put it in writing, I became the villain. There was a project that €, a client deliverable we'd been pushing back for 6 months. 6 months. The client had been patient in the way that clients are patient right before they leave. I sat down with the team and asked a simple question: what does it take to finish this in 30 days? The answers I got back were not answers. They were feelings. It's complicated. There are a lot of dependencies. We'd need to restructure how we're thinking about the whole thing. I listened to 40 minutes of this before I said, fine, I'll build the timeline myself, and I'll assign the tasks myself, and we'll meet every 3 days to check progress. Daniel, who had been there longer than anyone, told me I was micromanaging. I told him I was managing. There's a difference. Micromanaging is hovering over people who are already doing their jobs. What I was doing was ensuring that jobs got done by people who had, until recently, treated the concept of a deadline as a loose interpretation of reality. We delivered the project in 28 days. The client renewed their contract. Nobody said thank you. What they said was that the process had been stressful, and that they hoped, going forward, things could feel more collaborative. I said, of course, the moment we had established that we could actually deliver what we promised to deliver, I was happy to collaborate all day long. I was called a tyrant for the first time at the year-end review. Not to my face €, through the anonymous feedback system the HR department had set up with good intentions. The word appeared 3 times across different submissions. Tyrant. Rigid. Doesn't listen. I read every single comment. Some of them were fair. I had been blunt when I should have been patient. I had skipped explanations when I was moving fast. Those I took seriously and I changed. But the core of it €, the expectation that accountability would vanish if they pushed back hard enough €, that I did not change. What I noticed over the following year was quieter than I expected. The complaints didn't stop, but the work improved. People started meeting their own deadlines before I had to say anything. Marcus, who had been the loudest critic in year 1, came to me in spring and said he'd been offered a role somewhere else but was turning it down because, and I remember the exact words, at least here I know where I stand. I didn't make a big deal of that. I just said good, I'm glad. By the time I'd been in the role for 2 years, the team had cut its delivery delays by 80%. We'd onboarded 4 new clients. 2 people had been promoted who hadn't been promoted in years because, previously, there had been no visible standard to rise to. They still called me demanding. Some of them probably still used the word tyrant behind closed doors. I stopped caring about that somewhere around month 18. What I cared about was that when someone on my team told a client something would be done, it was done. That when a person was hired and told what their job was, they knew what their job actually was. That the people who put in the work could see the results of that work, clearly, without it being diluted by the people who hadn't. That's what I was doing. Not tyranny. Just the basic, unremarkable, apparently radical act of meaning what I said.